Hazel Hall will give us some ideas. Hazel is she's director in the Center for Social Informatics within the Institute for Informatics and Digital Innovation. Hazel, this is really innovation, because to talk about social informatics, this is in the past years, informatics has been asocial from my point of view. So to have an institute that now is devoted to the social informatics is really to be innovator. Sorry, Hazel, because it's the first time that we met, and I can't suggest any place to our colleagues, but for the visitors of the Barcelona for the first time, or if you have time tomorrow, I recommend not only to you, Hazel, but to visit the National Museum of Arts. The part of the Romanic art is quite impressive and quite unique in Barcelona, with paintings in churches that has 1,000 years old. So, fantastic. Hazel, thank you very much for your talks. Hazel will talk about a really interesting initiative in United Kingdom, where the important players agreed or cooperate in order to establish an agenda for the research. Thank you, Hazel.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Can you put your hand up if you're tweeting? No one's tweeting. Please, can you tweet our presenter? Someone's tweeting over there. That's fine. Okay, and at the back, right. Just for Twitter, I'm at Hazel H. So if you can tag, if it's something I'm actually quoting, pop that on. Right. I'm really pleased to be here to be able to talk about the work that we did for the LIS Research Coalition in the UK. Recently, we've started doing a bit more work related to the coalition, so it's really good timing, and you're actually the first public forum that's going to hear about this new work. So it's news hot off the press, and you're hearing it first. They don't get to hear about it in Edinburgh until I do a presentation next week, so lucky you. Right, how do we move this forward? What do I use? Oh, I don't know which is the down button? No. Oh, we're all hopeless on the... Is it that one? That's it. Okay, that's fine. There isn't time for introductions about who we are and what we do, but if you want to find out everything about my professional life, I've got a website. It's hazelhall.org, and there's an about page. In short, I have a French degree, studied librarianship and information science, a postgrad one-year course, worked as an academic librarian for a very short time, and then went into academia as an academic, and I did a PhD part-time a little bit later on. Now, what I'm going to talk about is 3 projects. There's a parent project, which is the Library and Information Science Research Coalition, and then it's got 2 daughter projects or son projects, depending on how we want to conceive them, and they're sisters to each other, or brothers to each other, or a brother and a sister. One's called LIS Dream and one's called LIS Realise. And I'll just explain to you what each of those is about. So LIS Research Coalition, that was set up in 2009, and its goal was to facilitate a coordinated and strategic approach to library and information science research across the UK for all the reasons that Lynn has just mentioned in her description of the challenges to research. So that includes things like getting practitioners to talk to academics, making sure that academics are putting their research out into the environment where practitioners will read it, making sure that LIS funding is visible so people apply for it and perhaps generate more LIS funding, so research funding rather. So that was the coalition. While we were running the coalition, we were seeking research funding from elsewhere, and we were very fortunate to get an Arts and Humanities Research Council grant to run LIS Dream. The DREAM stands for Developing Research Excellence and Methods. One of the big goals of that was to get people off or add to their obsession with interviews and questionnaires. So we had quite a big program for LIS Dream, effectively 2 conferences and 3 workshops, and at the 3 workshops there were lots of training sessions on different research methods beyond interviewing and questionnaires. Realise comprised 2 projects. The first one, we wanted to see which LIS research projects in the UK had influenced practice, and then work out what their characteristics were. So we did a survey first of all to ask practitioners to tell us, did any research that they had seen influence their work in academic libraries, special libraries, health libraries, wherever they were working, and to name them to us. Then what we did was we ranked them and found that there were some projects which kept coming up over and over again. They were named. Yes, there was a project by this person, which we think was in about 2004, and now we use the findings in our own work. So we ranked them, and then we took sample projects from each sector and did an analysis of them, went back to talk to the people who had run the project. We looked at the publications. We tried to find out if events were run around the project to try and discover what the characteristics were. And then we developed recommendations for impact so that in the future, provided that the practitioners saw the output from our own project, that future researchers could use these recommendations in their own work. If you want to read the report from that, that's on the Library and Information Science Research website. It's at lisresearch.org, and it's under the Realise tab on the website. The second part of Realise, which was conducted in 2012, was to produce some materials that pulled out the recommendations from the report that we wrote in 2011, and we had a workshop for that as well. In all, if you add up all the money that went into these three projects, it's about £229,000 from various places. So just to tell you how it was all set up, between 2006 and 2008, there were a number of consultations amongst the major stakeholders related to library and information science research in the UK. Effectively, people were saying something's got to be done about the problems we've got with research in this domain. In March 2009, the 5 founding members, and you can see their names across the bottom of there, I'm sure a couple of them will be familiar to you, particularly the British Library and CILIT. But those 5 founding members signed a memorandum of agreement, and then they put out a call for somebody to come and run this body, and I got very excited and I applied, and by August there I was 2 days a week running a project for 5 organisations, with the majority of the activity in London. So what happens next? I end up spending the next 3 years of my life with a third office, which is an East Coast train, which goes from Edinburgh to London in 4 hours. So I joke that in that period I actually had 3 offices, my office at home, my office at work, and the carriage on the East Coast train. So a lot of the publications that came out of the coalition, if I look back at them, I can remember exactly which station I was travelling past as I wrote the sentence. So we've provided this formal structure through the coalition, and you can see the reasons why. I wanted to improve access to the research that was being produced and maximise the relevance and impact of it for the practitioners. So there were various things to do. Bring together opportunities and results so people knew that there were opportunities to do LIS research and there were opportunities to use the results of it. To encourage dialogue between the research funders, because if they're in a coalition together, those 5 bodies had a regular reason to meet up and talk about LIS research. To promote the practitioner element of research, so get practitioners doing research as well as the academics, and then translate their outcomes into practice. Then to articulate our strategic approach. Part of that was by contributing to debate. So we had a little bit of mention of REF yesterday, which is the UK system of auditing research output in the UK. And one of the early things that the coalition did was we wrote a response when the planning was going on for REF. So we represented our domain through writing a response to the proposals. And then to promote the development of research capacity in LIS. And in the end, most of that work was done through the DREAM project once we got the extra money from the Arts and Humanities Research Council. If you want to see a manifestation of what we did, I'm actually quite proud of how we curated everything that we did, because we wanted to have a big reach. And although the coalition website hasn't been updated since July 2012, which was at the end of the project, I know that it's still very well used. So people will go to the project, they'll accept that website, they'll accept that some links will be broken now, but a large number of the links and the advice are current. So here's an example of a page which shows how we provide access to existing resources to be exploited and reused. So this is a page of resource directories and repositories which are useful to library and information science researchers. We also put special resources on there for practitioners as researchers, bearing in mind that they may not have had the research training that, for example, PhD students have as part of their programs. So if they wanted to teach themselves some new methods, they wanted to find references or handouts, this page in particular is of use to them. Now, one thing which continues, aside from the project, the new project I'm going to tell you about in a moment, is the Twitter feed. And if you are a Twitter user and you work in LIS, I wouldn't be surprised if you're one of the 5,907 followers of the LIS research Twitter feed. We felt that this was the most valuable thing that we could actually keep going beyond the project. So one of our colleagues, who's a former employee of the British Library, she's called Stephanie Kenner, she took over the Twitter feed after the project finished, and she now regularly updates it, passing on news from I think about 70 bodies she passes the news on, so filters it for the community. Lots of face-to-face events. You might recognise some characters on this photograph, including our keynote speaker from yesterday. And Charles Oppenheim's in the middle there, so some of you might recognise Charles. This is just to show you that as well as the codified information on the website, we had a number of face-to-face events. So we had some conferences, we had workshops, and then the other thing was we had external event participation. So I or a member of the coalition board or some representative would go and to someone else's event and talk about the issues I've just been explaining to you. In terms of impact, our social media reach was, well, we think was good. The average viewing rate of the web page is just under 3,000 views in 2012 when we were still live. That's dropped a little bit since because we're not actively publicising the site. I've already told you about the Twitter feed. And the slide shares, the 49 sets of slides from the various presentations, and the most viewed one has had 15,444 hits. That was one of the research methods presentations, and it's on horizon scanning. So lots of interest there, obviously not just from the LIS community. And there below that, I've given you an example of how the DREAM project had reach as well. 213 people came to various events in total, of instances of people coming, 33 presenters, and you can see the remote audience had lots of materials they could use. We've had an impact in terms of growth in knowledge and expertise and research skills. We surveyed the people who had the focused engagement in DREAM and found out that they believed that their theoretical knowledge had grown. They've been using the skills they learned, they had greater confidence as researchers, and networks were wider. New resources have come out of the coalition, even though they're not branded as the coalition. So there's a FACET published book called Research Evaluation and Audit, and a third of the authors of that had some involvement with the coalition, and I happen to write the foreword of it. And then the next thing is we think we've had some influence on the agenda of LIS professional bodies. So CILIP, LIRG, which is the Library and Information Research Group of CILIP, have promoted research in a way that I don't think they would have done had not all this activity taken place. And the European Association for Health Information and Libraries is an example. Their entire conference this year is about research links between research for practitioners, and that's the presentation I'm going to be, the conference I'm speaking at next week. There's some published reports on the immediate impact of DREAM. So the one from 2012 tells you about the learning of the people who took part in the project, and also we did a social network analysis of the members. So this is the current project, so I'm just going to finish off telling you about this. We've got a little bit of money to measure the impact of DREAM 3 years on. So what we're going to do is find out whether the people who participated in the workshop, so the core group, which is around about 33 people, have they implemented new and innovative research methods in their workplace environment? Have they been undertaking research? Have they been developing new research initiatives? Are they still working as a network? And perhaps there are new people who have joined that network. And can they point us to any further impact of the DREAM project? Has anything that they learnt from the DREAM project influenced something they've done, and there's been impact on the end user communities? We don't know the answer to that, but we should be reporting on that later in the year, perhaps early 2016. So what next? I'm giving the keynote presentation at the conference next week, and we're going to complete the DREAM impact study. There you are. I don't know if I did that in the time available, but if you want to find out more, there's all my contact details, and the slides are already on SlideShare, so you can look at them now, again, if you really want to. Thank you.
Thank you.